Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF-Accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hey everyone! Today's Craft of Coaching episode is a little bit more niche than this podcast usually gets. Typically, I focus more globally on the many different types of coaching that someone might be practicing. Today, I'm going to be focusing in on coaching skills for managers. And even though that is going to be the focus, I will say I think a lot of what I'm going to share here is very applicable to really any situation where you might need to manage others. That includes parenting, which is a form of management of others. PTA meetings could be a form of managing others. If you're the head of some kind of a project, that's a form of managing others. So I think it's applicable in a lot of different ways. I also think it can be applicable to self-management. So how you manage yourself, how you manage your life, there's a lot of overlap. And I'm going to combine today's podcast topic of coaching skills for managers with a very exciting announcement, which is that after many, many years of getting so many requests for myself and my team to come in and do essentially coaching skills for managers as a training, as something that could impact the corporate environment, we're debuting leadershipwithcourage.com, our new offering, because we have just had a lot of requests over the years, and I've been a speaker in corporate environments and at conferences and other arenas. And every time I'm in those arenas, one of the things that really strikes me is how many people, they don't mind the industry they work in. They don't mind the actual day-to-day of the job they work in. They really struggle, however, with feeling like they go to work and there's really no room to be human. They are just a cog in the machine, coming to work, clocking in, clocking out. Now, particularly sometimes this means that there are really divisive, conflict-ridden work environments, and that is at the heart of it. Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's an entire company culture. So as we are opening up the Coaching Skills for Managers program and bringing it to nonprofits, organizations, corporate environments, etc., that is really what we're looking at. We're looking at how do we make work a place where people want to be. And at this time, I'm currently recording this. We're still in the age of coronavirus. Really excited for when that's done. And a lot of people are sharing that for as much stress as they feel working remotely, they're so glad not to be in a corporate environment anymore because it was the environment that was making things so difficult. But then I know there are a lot of managers and leaders who are also knowing the toll that the pandemic is taking on employees emotionally. And they're going, how can I motivate my people? How can I remotely do that? And one of the things that excites us the most is that Coaching Skills for Managers is going to have a virtual component to it. Our hope is that we're going to come in, we're going to facilitate, we're going to give tools, but we're also going to be doing follow-up with the organizations that we work with so that these tools can become part of company culture and the tools can be implemented even remotely. Now, Coaching Skills for Managers, huge topic, a lot of things that I could get into. Massive topic. I'm going to focus on three particular areas for this podcast episode just to get the wheels turning for how you could apply coaching skills in a managerial, corporate, or organizational environment. So here's the first one. And this is a very common thing that we start with in coaching. It's establishing a focus. Establishing a focus. The question that I would offer when it comes to establishing a focus is this: what is the buy-in at the company level for the employees? For your employees, for the people you are managing, what is the buy-in for them at the company level? And you can extrapolate this to the team level as well if you want to. So if you are managing just a department, you could ask yourself, for the people in my department, the employees working in my department, what is the buy-in for them at the departmental level? Now, that's both a closed question and an open question, because buy-in can mean so many different things. But in essence, what I'm speaking to is this fact of human psychology. People want to feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves. So on the company level, what's the buy-in for people to feel a sense of connection to something bigger than themselves? On the team level, what is the buy-in for someone to feel a sense of connection to something bigger than themselves? And I won't do this for every single example, but since I did say that I think these skills are all translatable to environments like managing a project or being a parent or even self-coaching, I'll say you as an individual could ask yourself, what's my buy-in in my life? What am I connected to that is bigger than myself in my life? Now, a lot of this question is going to come back to values. And there have been umpteen seminars and things about values are important. What are your values? And people are taken through identifying what their values are. But you need a practical application of what your values are. They have to be operationalized. I think that there are a lot of great exercises that are out there for how to operationalize values, and that's certainly something that we'll be helping organizations with in coaching skills for managers as we bring it to different teams and things of that nature. Brene Brown, if you want just a go-to, Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, has a great layout of how you could operationalize values. I'm a big examples person, so I'm going to give you the operationalized values that we articulated for my own company. So these are values that everybody who comes on board in my company gets access to. First one, integrity. And we identify behaviors that support this value and what we identify as slippery behaviors that destabilize this value. So for instance, with the value of integrity in my company, a behavior that supports this value is deal with what's before you. If we take the value of integrity and we operationalize it, we identify the behavior that makes integrity possible. A behavior that makes integrity possible would be deal with what's before you. And there's an example in our write-up that says either prep for the difficult conversation or have the difficult conversation, but don't avoid the conversation. Either work on the project or negotiate a new deadline, but don't avoid the project. A slippery behavior that destabilizes this value of integrity, makes it harder for the value of integrity to show up in my company, would be procrastination or avoidance of dealing with things that need to be dealt with, whether in your life or with the program. And this is a big part of what we're bringing with coaching skills for managers as well, that we cannot keep treating workplaces as places where people clock in and out, that the pattern of not dealing with things in your personal life will show up in your work. So if you are managing people and you see an employee or someone on your team who does not seem to want to deal with things at work, understand that that person probably has things they are hiding out from or procrastinating around in their personal life as well. Another example of a value that we have operationalized in my company is, and this might sound like an odd one, but sensuous delight. Sensuous, not sexual. This is one we kind of laugh at because people's heads go there, but sensuous delight, meaning an integration of the body into the work. You're not supposed to leave your humanity, your feelings at the door when you come to work. So a behavior that stabilizes or brings forth the value of sensuous delight in my company, I say integrating daily body-based practices such as meditation or exercise that help you to stay resourced and present. Now, does this mean that I run around after everyone on our team and say, did you meditate today? Did you exercise today? No, I don't. But I need to articulate it for the team. Everybody's in choice around what they're going to do. There are other things that, this document that I'm reading from right now to pull together this podcast episode has a number of different behaviors for all of these values, and I'm just picking one. But the important thing is that it is put into the work. And we frequently will start a meeting by taking a moment to check in. Red, yellow, green, where are people at today? Red, I'm really in a bad place. Yellow, green, I'm good. Life is great. Or we've opened up meetings before with somebody doing an invocation or a prayer. We've opened up meetings before with taking a moment just to breathe deeply. So what are the things that can help us to stay resourced and present? How can those body-based practices be part of our lives? And it is articulated in our company values as well that a slippery behavior that would destabilize the value of sensuous delight, that would make it harder for the value of sensuous delight to show up in our company, would be if on an individual level, people are skipping body-based practices. It will have an impact on someone's work life eventually if they are continually skipping body-based practices and they don't do anything about it. The third value in my company is community. And that the behavior that supports that value in showing up is you are visible and present within your role and within your life. And because so much of our communication happens on digital devices, visibility and presence will often be tied to how often you share, comment, like, celebrate, or articulate your empathy for someone. We want to be really real. We've got a team of 14 different people who live in different parts of the world. We are not in a room together. So I'm taking the time in this written document of our operationalized company values to say, because so much of our communication happens on devices, these are the things we need to see. And slippery behaviors that decrease how much community can show up in our company would be, there's a sense of where are you between you and any member of the team because connection has lapsed and it's difficult to tell what you are up to. Another value, and this should come as no shock to anyone, courage. So we practice the value of courage actively by being aware of hiding out behaviors, particularly not enough time when the real issue is lack of prioritization, and we consciously avoid hiding out behaviors. And then a slippery behavior that destabilizes this value would be participating in hiding out behaviors, numbing out, overwork, whine every night, constantly checking out in front of digital devices. Now, once again, for people who work with me, am I somehow checking how often they're on their digital devices? No. But the important thing is that we're just being really open, transparent, and clear that it is impacting your life if every single night you are hitting a bottle of wine, if every single night you are constantly checking out in front of digital devices. This is just a fact. This is what it is. It's going to lead to some not great stuff, and it's going to impact your work eventually. So it's about saying it and then hoping that everybody in the company is doing what they need to do to make sure that they are bringing the best of themselves. And if they're ever wondering, just had a talk with Kate, she's a little concerned about some deadlines that I haven't been hitting and things like that. What am I going to do about that? It's like, you can look at this document and you can see these are some things I might need to attend to in my personal life. And I think a huge mistake organizations make, again, said this in a couple different ways now, is only attending to the task and not attending to the person. There is always a human being behind that task. Next value, self-responsibility. And for that, we say there is power in deciding that you are responsible for your life, and we want people on our team who walk into the arena with the attitude, I am in charge of my life, my attitude, my happiness, and every day I work and play on creating the life of my dreams. A slippery behavior that destabilizes the value of self-responsibility would be resistance to the idea that you are the one making the choices about your intention, your attention, and your options for action. You're the one who decides those things. So these things are all written out. And as I said, we have a very long document for everybody on our team when we onboard that says, here's what the values are. Here's what it looks like when things are working well. Here's what it looks like when they're not. And when there is this kind of an operationalized values available to everybody in the organization, people are then enabled to say, if I'm not happy at work, how is it I might be disconnected from the focus, the buy-in? And when people have buy-in, what ends up happening is they self-manage and they seek to overcome obstacles. In essence, being part of my company personally is about something much bigger than whether or not you hit complete on a task in base camp. It's about the kind of person you want to be, because we're very clear within the team that we actually only want to work with other people who are very clear about the kind of person they want to be. We didn't say perfect. You don't have to be perfect to be on our team, but are you looking at your life in a conscious way? Is it who you be that you want to show up in the world, doing something great, being part of something bigger than yourself? And in my mind, everyone in a company should feel buy-in. If you run a grocery store, your cashiers should feel buy-in. Buy-in is not just for the upper echelons. A cashier should be coming to work in your grocery store with a sense of the fact that I ring up these groceries for this person means that they can go home and have a dinner with their family, and that is the thing that's bigger than me. I have an opportunity every single time I ring up a customer to smile and to connect with them and to feel good about who I am in the world. So buy-in is really important. Again, when people buy in, they self-manage and they actually seek to overcome obstacles. And that saves you a ton of time as a manager, because the worst position for a manager to be in is to have a team that they basically constantly have to corral and correct. That way just totally drains the manager. It's not fun for the team. And I also believe that inherently people actually want to self-manage. They want to overcome obstacles. But if the culture is not there, they don't really see how they can do that. They feel subject to somebody else's rules. So that is establishing a focus. If there is a focus around which everyone can get some level of buy-in, groups, companies, families, any amalgamation of people, they will function better. So establishing a focus is the first coaching skill for managers that I'm talking about on this podcast episode. Again, there's so many skills I could talk about today, and I'm going to limit it to 3. Let's talk now about the next skill, which is to operate from a place that is forward-leaning. Now, traditionally in the coaching industry, there has been a saying that therapy is about the past and coaching is about the future. Therapy is where you talk about what happened to you then. Coaching is about talking about goals and where you want to go. I actually disagree with that. I believe that coaching is about the here and now, and that sometimes a reconciliation of who you have been in the past is showing up very much in the here and now present. And who you are being in the here and now present is absolutely impacting where you're going to go in the future. So forward-leaning is the phrase that I bring in, and I know that that phrase is very common in the ICF or International Coaching Federation language. So the idea with forward-leaning is that you are looking at where someone is right now and where they want to go. In a company, we have to look at where your company is right now, or your organization is right now. We have to acknowledge what baggage is coming in from the past that might be affecting what's happening in the organization right now. And then we also want to look at where we're going to go in the future. I think it's a mistake in any organization to bring in a consultant and say, we've been doing it this other way. We're doing a restructuring. It's a new day for this company. We're going to let all that go. Forward momentum. That's where we're going. Well, you have probably got some scar tissue from the past, from things that weren't working well, that has to be cleaned up because it is right in the here and now, and it is going to be the foundation upon which you are building your future. So you want to clean it up, or you want to have to deal with it later in some tricky way that's more complicated. To be forward-leaning, companies really have to combine empathy and accountability. And that combination of empathy and accountability is another foundation of coaching. Most managers, and I am not saying any of this in a critical way, I'm saying this in a way that understands the pressure managers are under. I manage people too. I get it. But most managers in larger organizations especially only look at the accountability piece. Accountability being, was it delivered on time, in full, appropriate to whatever metrics we've set for the quality of the work? They don't look at the empathy. And the problem with that is that people need to be human. People are not happy when they are showing up for work. And again, they're just a cog in the machine. They stamp it, they move on. They stamp it, they move on. They stamp it, they move on. You will not get loyalty from those employees. They will leave if another company paying a similar wage, and in many cases, even less of a wage, but that has more openness around the humanity of the employee. They will leave for that company if that opportunity presents itself. You have to combine accountability with empathy. Again, I understand why managers often default to accountability. It's a lot messier to bring in empathy. You also have the pressure of the people maybe relying below you on the corporate food chain, maybe demanding something from you above you on the corporate food chain. So at the end of the day, there's a huge part of your job as a manager that depends on you being able to deliver. So I get it. I get why a manager would say, did it get done? No, I'm angry. Go tell the employee, you have to get this done now. But again, if you aren't spending the time on the empathy on the front end, you will pay later. And how you'll pay is a lack of loyalty, poor retention, decreased efficiency, extra sick days taken, more tardiness, more leaving early, more phoning it in, more having to be monitoring the people you work with. And that is really frustrating. Now, empathy gets difficult also because, as I said, it's messy. Managers have said to me before, I'm this person's boss. I'm their manager. I don't want to be their therapist. Well, I've got some good news for you. You don't have to be their therapist. It is absolutely possible to combine empathy and accountability and not let empathy be the thing that gets somebody off the hook for the accountability. I'm going to give you an example that comes from the parenting world because so many people are parents that perhaps they can understand this. If you've had a child that is younger, that has had a very long day, a lot of walking around, a lot of excitement, and it starts getting to the end of the day, that child, as it gets more tired, is more likely to have a strong emotional reaction to news that it doesn't like. Got to take a bath before bed. Suddenly a tantrum about having to take a bath, even though maybe your kid hasn't had a tantrum in forever. As a parent, you look at what your kid is bringing, this tantrum over taking a bath before bed. You have empathy for the fact, oh yeah, kiddo had a long day. We did a lot of walking today, or we were in the car a lot today. I had to run a lot of errands, so maybe my kid just didn't really have very much fun today. That kind of sucks. The empathy is there, and if your kid needs a bath, they need the bath. So you're going to be accountable to that. So you're empathetic about the circumstances that would cause your child to act out, but you also are accountable because you're a parent and your child needs to take a bath. That's how you combine empathy and accountability. It is the same thing in the workplace. Let's say somebody doesn't get something to you on a deadline. Accountability only is going to go unacceptable. This is going to go into a write-up. You didn't get it in on time. That's what's happening. There's a consequence. You get rewards for good behavior, punishments for bad behavior. Accountability combined with empathy would be, let's have a talk. It is imperative that this report is delivered on time. I can't have it late again. But I do care about the fact that something else must have been going on that this was late. Are you doing okay? I just want to check in with you. And who knows what they're going to say? Maybe all it is 15 minutes of just listening and they're going through a really hard time. And after 15 minutes of listening, you say, I'm really sorry that you're going through such a hard time. Empathy is not about fixing the person. And in coaching, you can't, and I'm putting air quotes. If you could see me right now as I'm recording this, I'm doing the little finger air quotes thing. You're not fixing anyone in coaching. The client is always self-directed. You managing someone else, they have to be self-directed. You're not coming in to be their therapist. Therapists don't fix either, by the way. But you're not coming in to be their therapist and try to help them figure out their personal lives. Empathy is an understanding. I see that you are in something. I'm sorry that you're in something. I wish you weren't in something right now. And one way to really set up a conversation where you're concerned about someone potentially saying something and trying to use that as their excuse for why they can't deliver, and you as manager know that even if someone's going through a rough time in life, it's a job, they still have to deliver. Set up the conversation from the get-go by saying, when you sit down with the person, I wanted to have a conversation with you today. And it's something of an atypical conversation. As you know, that report was late, and the one right before it was late too. And I do want to talk about how we can get some accountability around those reports coming in on time. I also just wanted to have a human moment with you and let you know that even though we have to have those reports on time, I am just guessing something's going on at home or in your life that's really difficult right now. And I see you. And if you want to talk about that for a minute as part of this conversation for how we can set up a successful on-time report in the future, I'm open to that. So lots of boundaries around the fact that, this is not a conversation about you're going to just dump all your problems on me and I'm going to listen and then I'm going to go, you know what, just take the day off. That's not what this conversation is. This conversation is absolutely, we need to have accountability around getting that report in on time. I also want to let you know that I have a vested interest in the fact that you're a human being with a life and that something has probably come up for you. These are really helpful conversations to have with the people you work with. I would even say that these are helpful conversations in general to have with people who are your organizational peers. And there are aspects of coaching skills for managers that myself and my team will be bringing that are about how do we improve the cohesiveness among peers, among all the leaders, all the managers in an organization. But in essence, when you know how to coach your employees, when you're using skills like this, you will have happier employees who are performing better, who are delivering better, who are more loyal, and the whole work environment improves so much when people are just happy to come to work. It's a pretty amazing thing. Now, there's one more skill I wanted to talk about in this podcast episode, and it is another skill that, and wow, we could have so many conversations just about this one skill. I'm going to focus in on just a piece of this one skill, and it is the coaching skill of listening. Most people think that they are listening just because they heard words, but listening happens on different levels. And the two levels I'll focus us in on for this conversation is there's the level of what is actually being said, and that's what people traditionally think of when they think of listening. And then there's the level of what isn't being said. So if you're sitting down with an employee to talk about a late project, and the employee says, or the person you're working with says, or if you're a parent and your kid, you're trying to talk about why they didn't do something, whatever they say, the employee says, the project was late because I had to work on something else that was due, and then when I came back to the project, it just took longer than expected. That's what's being said. The project was late, I had something else that was due, came back to this project, and then it took longer than expected. What isn't being said? Well, first of all, tone of voice and affect. There's a huge difference between sitting down with someone you manage and you say, talk to me a little bit. I noticed that the project was late. And they say, well, the project was late because I had something else I had to work on that was due, and it took longer than expected. Right? That's a totally different tone and affect than, you know what, I'm really sorry. The project was late because I had this other item that was due. And then I came back to the project and it just took so much longer than I had expected. There's a huge difference between those two tones of voice, those affects. You might also consider what isn't being said as encompassing body language. When you talk to the person about the project that isn't due, are they meeting your eyes? Are they downcast? Are they rubbing their eyes? Do they seem engaged with the conversation? Are they treating the whole conversation like it's just a pain in the ass? Or are they treating the conversation like they're scared you're about to be mad? Or what's that about? Another thing that I don't hear in this example would be how the person plans to remedy it in the future. I could see a lot of different managerial scenarios where a manager says to an employee, hey, why is the project late? The employee says, the project was late because I had to work on something else that was due, and then I came back to the project. It took longer than expected. But that person is not saying, here's what I plan to do differently in the future. I plan to let you know if I have to work on something else that's due. I plan to let you know if something takes longer than expected. I also don't hear in that explanation an awareness of time management. If a manager hears the explanation, well, the project was late, had to work on something else, it was due, I got back to the project, it took longer than expected, it would be easier for a manager to think, oh, great, they know what the problem is and they're handling it, and okay, got it, and make an assumption that the employee is set and next time it won't happen again. But what if the reason the project was late was because the employee has issues with time management? So this is why you listen for the things that aren't being said, because a great follow-up question would be, somebody says the project was late, I had to work on something else that was due, came back to the project, it took longer than expected. Well, great. Follow-up question time. How many hours are you putting onto projects for our department versus other departments, would you say, in any given week? And then you hear a little bit about that. In a 40-hour week, whoa, they're putting 30 hours into the other department and 5 into yours. Oh, whoa, that is actually information you need to know, because if you don't have that information, you're going to have another conflict on your hands in a very short period of time. Also, I don't hear in that explanation whether or not they need help with prioritizing or time management, or do they lack a particular resource. Maybe you're not aware of this, but maybe they are actually doing 2 jobs, or maybe you are aware, but you're just not thinking of it. Maybe you're not aware of how much it's affecting them to be doing 2 people's work. Maybe it's time for their role to be split into 2 different roles. Now, these are all hypotheticals that I'm playing with, but my point is that if you are listening to what is actually being said, and you develop as a manager the coaching skill of being able to listen and think about what isn't being said, it clues you into the kinds of questions you can ask your employees that will help them to be clear with you, help you to be clear with them, minimize the potential for conflict, navigate conflict if it's coming up, and especially if a skill like listening is combined with establishing a focus and that buy-in and operating from a place that is forward-leaning, combining that accountability and empathy. Everybody is in the game then of how do we get the work done to the best of our ability. That is what sets people up to come to work feeling like people actually care that they're there. It matters that they do the job that they do, and it matters that they do it well, and that everybody is in this together. That everybody is coming to work feeling good about what they do. It actually matters that we create workplaces where people feel good when they are at work, when they are doing their job, when they're interacting with the team, when they are showing up in their environment. So these are just 3 skills that we're bringing as we give training to managers who want to integrate coaching skills into the workplace. Again, you can find more information about this new offering by going to leadershipwithcourage.com. And of course, if you have been a longtime listener and you are an employee, maybe you're not a manager, but you work in an organization or for a company and you're thinking to yourself, I would really, really, really love it if the corporate culture here was a little bit better. Reach out to us and who knows, maybe we'll show up at your workplace and shake a few things up in a positive direction. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.